Hi guys, welcome to part 2 of our little 3-part mini-series on the Heian Nidan or Pinan Shodan kata application. So what we're looking for in today's video is how we're going to use the shutos that you see in that big long center stretch of the kata. So obviously we have the 3 shutos going forward that finish with the Shuto-Uke nukete, and we have 2 pairs of shutos going in opposite directions. We're going to run through 2 drills, one very simple one slightly more complex. Thanks to Ian Abernethy and Andy Allen for those drills, that's where they come from. So I'd like to credit them for those. Again, we see what we saw in the first video. We see one hand controlling while the other hand strikes. We're still looking at controlling, striking to the head and having those hands working together in tandem to complete the job. Because we've got so many shutos, we're going to show those for an entire episode of this little mini-series. It's a really useful technique to learn. You can develop off it in a lot of different ways, has a lot of application in a lot of different places, and you can get into it quite well, and it works really well as a contingency for other techniques in the kata that fail. So this is a really good episode, really important episode. Pay attention. Look at how we use it, how we drill it, and then we'll kind of move on afterwards. So in this section we're going to be looking at our 3 shutos and our Shuto-Uke nukete. So this is the first center portion of the kata, okay? So where we're heading down towards the shogun. So we've got 2 drills that we're going to use here, a very basic one and a slightly more in-depth one. I didn't come up with either of these, they've been taken from other people, but they're really good demonstrations of the concepts that we want to use here. So for the first drill, Sophia's just going to hold her arm up in front of her, so it's going to be her left arm, and this is just for me to practice the technique of the shuto against an actual human target. So we prep the shuto. That left hand comes up, that right hand comes forward. So from here I'm controlling this hand, okay? That's my left hand coming up. My right hand's going to come forward and I'm aiming for the face. This isn't necessarily going to be like a fight ender. You get that advice a lot, get them in the eyes, get them in the throat, that kind of thing. With fingers, this isn't going to be a fight ender, but it is going to be a distraction, an inconvenience, and it's going to give us maybe a second or 2 of extra time to move and think. So I've controlled the arm there, and I'm up into the face here. This right hand's then going to come over and control the tricep here, and that left hand's going to come from controlling the other arm, and that's going to be my strike into the neck. It's really important when we're doing these shutos that we are controlling the tricep. Or somewhere around here. If we're too low on the arm, Sophia can bend her arm and get out quite easily. If I've got control over the tricep, particularly if I've also got the arm trapped under my arm, if Sophia tries to then escape, I've got a much greater level of control over her. So this is just a really good kind of beginner's drill to practice the shuto. Control the arm, up into the face, control the tricep, strike to the head or neck, depending on height. We're going to build on this. As I do the first shuto strike, Sophia's just going to bring her hand up and block that shuto strike. Okay, so she's just going to bring her hand to here, so that as I strike, there's something in my way. So pop the left hand up, control, face, control, strike, and she's blocked that. Okay? We now have to swap hands. So this is going to come across, control, strike into the neck. So there we've got left to right, and we can do exactly the same thing. If Sophia pops her right hand up, we can do exactly the same on the other side. Control, eyes, it's blocked, control, strike. and we've got that transition right to left. So to build on this even further, we're going to move into some basic grappling positions. And we're going to have a look at that in just a second. So we can expand on that drill a little bit more now. We're going to move into some grappling positions and play with something a little bit more close range. So that drill's a little bit medium range. We're going to move in, we're going to have proper contact with our opponent now. And we're going to practice that drill nice and short range. So we're going to start here in a basic collar and elbow position. So I'm controlling Safire's head and elbow from here. What I'm going to do, my left hand is going to come underneath. I'm going to take an overhook on her right tricep. From here, she's going to throw a left hook, and I'm just going to jam that, and that's Shuto-1. And then go overhook, control that other arm. My left hand's going to come across, catch her with the elbow if I can, but again, that's one of those nice to haves, and then smash that second Shuto into the neck, into the face. Let's have a look at that from a different angle. So again, we're here, I've got control of the head, I've got control of the elbow. I'm going to come up and overhook. Okay, I'm staying nice and close here. Safire's going to come in with a left hook. That's Shuto-1. Okay, I've got my forearm nice and in her elbow, so she can't get me from here. I'm going to overhook that arm. My left's going to come across, elbow if I can. Finish with that Shuto strike to the head or neck. So this is one that we can easily kind of run through over and over again. And it's really easy to just pick up some speed, reset, and practice that a few times at a bit of a higher speed, and that's a nice practical use for our Shuto. One thing that we do have, but it's quite important to note, is height differences. So this isn't as applicable for a shorter person against a taller person. If I was shorter than Safire and we started here, I'm fine up until generally about here. If I'm shorter and have a shorter range, my ability to get that forearm into the neck is quite reduced. So I end up striking perhaps with the hand, perhaps with the fingers, and it's just not as effective a technique. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to transition here, block that punch, overhook, and I'm going to throw this Shotai strike. Okay, and that's my Osayuki Nukite position on either hand. So it doesn't matter even if we start the opposite way around. Just going to throw a right hook, I overhook that, Shotai to the face, and if Safire just slides herself out, I end up in this Osayuki Nukite position from the kata, and that's a really nice contingency, not only for shorter people who may struggle to strike a taller opponent, but for everyone, and it's just a good variation. So what we can also do is we can start to build on this a little bit, particularly when we start to look at Heian Sandan. We've got a really nice simple takedown. We've got Byobu Daoshi, which is to topple a folding screen. It's a really nice simple takedown that we're going to use. So we start in exactly the same way. Take that overhook, jam that punch, control there, and then I'm going to step through, Shotai into the face, and take Safire down over that front leg. And that's a really nice little takedown that we can add, but we'll look at that more in Heian Sandan. It's just so that you've got an awareness here of how we can build on these drills further down the line. So the next thing that we're going to look at for these Shutos is how to turn it into a bit of a looping drill, and this comes from Andy Allen at Nova Karate Jutsu. So we're going to make this a continuous drill that we can alternate people going through. It's a really good way to get a lot of practice in for this Shuto. So we're going to start in exactly the same position. I've got my overhook, I'm going to block that punch that comes in, get that other overhook, elbow, strike, push across. I'm going to take that collar position. Sophia's going to take control of my arm, and we're going to transition back to the collar and elbow hold. And we're on the other side, so I'm going to take my overhook back. She's going to throw a right hook, which I'm going to jam, take control, elbow, strike, control of the head, and we're back in that collar and elbow position. Okay, so we can run through that relatively quickly, and you can have partners just running through that, swapping time, swapping person each time, swapping side each time. It's a really good way to get a lot of practice there. So that's the main use for those Shuto-Ukes. So we're coming down that centre line and we're finishing with the Osai-Uke Nukete. Really good drill you can do is have each person go through the drill. So now Sophia's going to do it. She's going to take the overhook, block the punch, overhook the right hand, left hand's going to come across, Shuto, and we're going to transition back, and we can loop through this, and then at any time we want, as we take that overhook, we can throw the Shotai, or we can go back to the earlier drill where we're swapping Shutos, loop through that, loop through that, loop through that, overhook and Shotai. So the last thing that we're going to look at for this is a little bit of pad work for those Shuto drills, how we can add a little bit of impact in to our training with partners, because again, I don't want to be hitting my partner really hard in the head or neck, because then I won't have a partner anymore. So we're going to grab a pad, we're going to see how we can use this with pads so we can get a little bit of force behind those strikes. So for the pad work here, we only need the one pad, which Sophia's got on her right hand. So this is going to be the hand that starts off controlling my head. So we're going to start off in exactly the same position. I'm going to take my overhook, block that punch, overhook here, and as I come across, Sophia's going to bring her hand across, give me a surface to strike. So we're going to do that again. Control, block, control, round, strike. Striking into the pad, not missing, and striking into my opponent. Okay, so be really careful here, we are very close to the head. So round, control, control, striking into the pad, which serves as our opponent's head. So once more, control, jam, control, strike. So we can use that as a really easy pad drill for when we're training this, just to get people hitting stuff a little bit harder. We don't want to hit our opponents, particularly in the head or in the neck. So this will just give people a little bit of feedback when they're striking.